One of the charges by some black leaders following the murder of George Floyd is that America is saturated with systemic racism, racism that fills our entire society and government. Now, this was once true. From the days of slavery through the mid-1960s, blacks were held back in all kinds of ways due to racist laws, racist policies, and racist people. But thanks to the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King, a host of lesser civil rights warriors, and the gracious providence of God, laws were both enacted and enforced which demanded that blacks receive exactly the same privileges and opportunities as whites. Now, there were two problems left over after the civil rights movement came and went and brought legal equality for all races. First, although the blacks could no longer be openly denied the privileges that whites had, they were still far poorer than whites. Apart from black athletes and singers, most black families made significantly less money than the whites did. Large numbers of blacks lived in poor neighborhoods where gangs roamed, prostitutes paced, and bullets flew. And second, America still had its share of racists. Racial slurs and racist incidents still took place, and black leaders saw these things as evidence that America was racist to the core and that systemic racism was alive and well. No thinking man or woman can deny that racism still exists in America. But is America steeped in racism in every city, every town, every village, from California to New York, from Michigan to Texas? Nobody but a racist himself could ever believe this. Blacks make more money than ever. Blacks and whites marry each other, of which my wife and I are examples. Blacks have more job opportunities than ever before, and blacks are elected to political offices of all kinds. We even elected a black president, Barack Obama, twice. This could never have happened had not a sizable number of whites voted for him. When George Floyd was killed, people were suggesting that it was hardly safe for blacks to walk on the roads or drive their cars down the streets. Surely policemen were killing unarmed blacks every single day, mowing them down by the thousands. But any objective look at the statistics will reveal what a total fabrication this is. Last year, there were not thousands of unarmed blacks killed by police in America. There were not hundreds, nor were there dozens. There were 8 or 9, depending on whom you read. What this means is that if an unarmed black man or woman goes out for a walk or goes for a drive in their car, they are around 5 times more likely to be struck by lightning than to be killed by a policeman. While even one incident per year of a wrongful killing by a policeman is a tragedy and should be thoroughly investigated and the policeman brought to justice, it is a huge stretch to convert 9 killings in a year into a charge of systemic racism rampant throughout our entire nation. The problem of the inordinate number of blacks who live in poverty and in poor, gang-infested neighborhoods is real. Some have interpreted this to be the result of racism. But there is little evidence of this. What is far more likely the cause is the startling statistic that over 70% of black babies are born out of wedlock. Former President Barack Obama stated that children who grow up without fathers are 5 times more likely to be poor and 20 times more likely to end up in prison. Of course, many white children experience fatherless homes as well, but for the whites, it's an exception. For the blacks, sadly, this is the rule. Black males need to follow Beyoncé's admonition to put a ring on it. The political left and the right disagree on almost every issue. But the one issue on which they do agree is racism. Both conservatives and liberals, evangelicals and atheists, and Republicans and Democrats recognize and declare that racism is evil and despicable. Anyone who can suggest that the racial situation is as bad as ever in the U.S., well, they're just living in some kind of a fantasy world. For every wrongful police killing of a black man, there are millions of black men and women who get up in the morning, eat a nice breakfast, go to work, come home at night, eat dinner and spend time with their families, and repeat the cycle the next day with no police interactions at all. And they do this day after day and year after year. The two remaining problems, leftover white racism and the disintegration of black families, both have the same answer, and that answer is Jesus Christ. No man or woman can be full of Christ and full of racism simultaneously. Where Jesus enters, racism exits. Similarly, the black males who refuse to marry the women they impregnate and they will not father the children they produce, they need more than a good lecture to be more responsible. They need Jesus. After the Civil War, the chains of slavery were removed from the African Americans. And after the Civil Rights Movement in the 60s, the chains of racist laws and policies were brought down. And today, the chains of unequal opportunities are collapsing. But what we must all recognize, black and white, is that the greatest, the strongest, and the worst chains of all are the chains of sin that tie the hands and hearts of all Americans, black and white. And these are chains that no government can break, no laws can fix, no protests can address. The Bible tells us that we're all, black, white, Asian, and Hispanic, under the chains of sin, which hold us back at every turn. They spew ugly racist thoughts into our minds, demand sex but refuse marriage, spoil our relationships, limit our potential for usefulness, and ensure that we must go to a dark place of torment after we die. And the only remedy for these chains is Jesus, the one who tells us, "If the Son shall make you free, you shall be free indeed." And again he declares, "I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever." And this bread, the Lord Jesus, is freely available to all races and all people.